Welcome back, students, to Chapter 2, Computing Wages and Salaries. This is Dr. Mercado speaking. This is a continuing lecture for Accounting 1329, Payroll and Business Tax Accounting, and we are using the 2023 edition. Now, in this particular lecture, we are going to be covering problem 217A. Just a reminder, it is very important that you read the chapter. Okay? So problem 217A reads as follows. During the first week in November, Aaron Mills worked 45 and a half hours and produced 1,275 units under a piece rate system. The regular piece rate is 45 cents a unit. Mills is paid overtime according to the FLSA ruling for overtime worked under a piece rate system. Compute. We're being asked to compute the piece work earnings, the regular hourly rate, the overtime hourly rate, the overtime earnings, and the total earnings. Okay, now before we proceed, there's a lot of important information on section 24B of your textbook, which talks about and provides wonderful examples on piece rate calculations. Okay, so basically under the piece rate system, the employer pays its workers according to their output. Okay, the more they produce, the more money they make. Okay, so this is a wonderful way to incentivize your employees to increase your production. Okay, because why? They're getting paid based on production. The more they produce, the more money they take home. Okay, now in this particular example, we have four requirements. Well, five, because we also have to calculate the overtime hourly rate. So there's several requirements that we need to satisfy. Okay, so let's begin with the piece work earnings. Okay, how do we calculate the piece work earnings? Well, according to the problem, this particular employee produced 1,275 units. Okay, and the employees get paid 45 cents a unit. Okay, so we multiply the number of units produced times the rate. So we've got 1275. Sorry about that. 1275 times 0.45. That gives me $573.75. Okay, that is based on their production. Okay, now that we know the piecework earnings, we can calculate the hourly rate. Okay, and this is going to be a varying factor based on production. So for this particular week, the hourly rate for Aaron is as follows. So we know that Aaron made $573.75 based on its production. Okay, we're going to divide that by the number of hours that he worked this week. In order to be able to produce 1,275 units, Aaron had to work 45 and a half hours. That was provided to you in the problem. It says here Aaron worked 45 and a half hours. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to calculate that. Okay, so we've got 573.75 divided by 45.5 hours. So that means that the hourly rate was 12.60989, and it keeps on going. So we have to round. So let's look at that third digit. Okay, that third digit is a 9, which means that I'm going to round up that second digit by 1. So my hourly rate will be 12.61. Always look at that third digit. If it's a 5 or greater, you round up. If it's a 1 through 4, you keep as is. So in this case, we're going to round up to 1261. Okay. The overtime hourly rate is, in this particular case, the overtime hourly rate is half. When we're using the piece rate system, it's half of your hourly rate. So we're going to get the 12.61 and we're going to multiply it by 0.5. Okay, let's see what we get. 1261 times 0.5, that will give me 6.305. Okay, because we have that third digit and it's a 5, we're going to round that second digit up by 1, so that will be 631. Okay, you can either multiply by 5 to make it easier, or you can simply get the hourly rate and divide by 2 and it'll give you the same thing. Okay, Now that we've got the regular hourly rate and we've calculated the overtime hourly rate, we can calculate the overtime earnings. Okay? So to calculate the overtime earnings, we have to figure out how many hours did this employee work overtime. Well, a regular week is 40 hours. This employee worked 45.5 hours, 45 and a half hours. So that means that if the employee worked 45.5 hours and a regular week should be worked 40 hours, that means that the employee worked 5.5 hours overtime. Okay? So 5.5 hours of overtime. And we're going to multiply that by the hourly overtime rate that we just calculated of 631. And let's see what that gives us. So 5.5 times 631. That will give me 34.705. So let's look at that third digit. It's a 5, which means I'm going to round up that second digit by 1. So that will be 34.71. Okay. And once we've got all that calculated, we can simply add the piecework earnings plus my overtime earnings. Okay. So we're going to add the 573.75 plus my overtime of 34.71. Oh, sorry about that. Here we go. Oh, well, I don't know what there we go, 34.71. There we go. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add them together. 573.75 plus 34.71. That will give me my total earnings of 608.46. So when we're calculating the piecework earnings, the first thing we need to do is multiply the total number of units produced by the rate of the unit. Once we calculate the piecework earnings, we work backwards to calculate the hourly rate. We get the piecework earnings divided by the total number of hours invested during the week to get our hourly rate. Once we get our hourly rate, to calculate our overtime rate, we get our overtime, your regular hourly rate times 5. That will give you your overtime hourly rate. Once we get our overtime hourly rate, we calculate any hours over 40. In this case, we had 5.5 hours, and we multiply it by the overtime hourly rate calculated. Okay, and that will give us the overtime earnings. To get the total earnings, you get your piecework earnings plus your overtime earnings, and that will give you your total earnings. Okay. A lot of information is provided in the problem. It's just a matter of us dissecting it and understanding what is it that, the information being provided, how are we going to be able to use it to calculate what is required. Okay, so not difficult. Please go back and read. There's wonderful examples in section 2.4b of your book that deals with the piece rate system. Okay, so that is it for problem 217. Until next time, have a wonderful day.